So this is the session where there's more of a panel than a participation, but don't worry, we'll be inviting you to join us very soon. So let me just explain how this final session will work. Nisha, who is here, Nisha, who spoke earlier before lunch, and I will be trying to keep this group in order and maybe hopefully stimulate some interesting dialogue. But essentially, this is the feedback session from the working groups who spent yesterday afternoon in different spaces in the neighborhood, really working on three main questions. And all of them, there was an artist group, there was an artist resettlement group, there was a funders group, and there was an arts support organizations group. And we can start to show who were part of those groups on the slides. So if you have a few minutes to check on each one. So representatives of those groups are joining us here, if we have enough chairs. And the three questions that we essentially ask them all to be thinking about is, firstly, given the current context and the current situation, how is that changing the way you work? What is the impact it's having now on your practice? The second question was, what are you doing about it? What are the strategies you're having to develop in order to navigate, to cope, and to deal with those changes? And the third question was really, how could we work together collaboratively? What would help build the work you're doing and those strategies if you were in dialogue and collaboration with other parties? And we were not specifying what, but we were saying, if it's about collaboration, what would be key? So those are the three questions that all of them were grappling with in different ways, of course, given the different contexts from which they came. There was a moment at the end of the working group sessions yesterday where the kind of facilitators and members of the work groups got together to really share how can we offer the clarity from our thinking, how can we share the ideas that we've been developing in a I guess cohesive but also understandable way. And what we didn't want was this to be a sort of feedback. These are all this is our list of thinking, and this is what we're going to do. But to create what is now, I hope, going to be a dialogue between those working groups around the issues and the strategies that they were coming up with, and then to open it up to you, because all of you are also very much involved in both the cultural field, but also working in the way that navigates the current moment. So the intention is to start with the artist group, which we've already seen the slide, but we could go back to the artist working group slide. Yeah, and and the artist working group really came up with a lot of issues. So what was decided at the end of the day yesterday was the artist group would be leading this session, presenting the issues as they see them, with the other working groups responding. So that's what Nisha and I will now try and make happen. This is live before your eyes, no rehearsal. But we're hoping this can be really productive of both collective thinking, but also collective strategies. So I don't know who is leading.
Got the question. Firstly, sorry.
Ashley has a question.
Sorry, bear with me. Well, I wondered would it be helpful for everybody if we just quickly went through the four groups and everybody can just kind of raise their hands, because we're not all seated by group right now. We're mixed a little bit. So the artist group, could I have y'all one more time just raise your hands and say hi? We have Achiro, Lama, Bart, Fabiana, Yasmin, and Jansu here. And then the National Support Orgs group, could you raise your hands? Sarah, Matthew, Sam, right, Sam? Oh, I'm sorry, and your name was?
Yayun.
Yayun, of course, Yayun. And our funder group, our lone Barbara over here from TMU. And then we've got our resettlement group, which is myself, Julie, and Rachel. Okay. I just wanted to try to give everybody a little sense of who was here. Thank you. Sorry.
That's perfect. I think the first question that we were going to begin with was, what are the immediate needs for newly relocated artists? Is that still a good place to start?
In case you didn't hear the question, it's what are the immediate needs? Aside from making sure that there's a roof over someone's head and that they're eating, having access to healthcare, insurance, mental health access, tax help. You know, there are a lot of services that exist, but for someone who may not have a firm grasp on English, who's freshly resettled in the US, it might be hard to find those resources. So I think it's also up to institutions to reach communities where they are, where they would be. You know, whether there's like a hotline that's set up or, you know, a lot of the help that we found has been word of mouth. And I've heard from a couple of folks who said there already exist databases, and that's really wonderful. I think maybe moving forward, we can also compound, like just make sure there's all these databases from the different organizations can all become one large database. And yeah, I think the mental health aspect is one of the most vital ones because a lot of resettled folks have either come from very traumatizing experiences or resettling alone can be very traumatizing. And having to petition for asylum can contribute to re-traumatization. So part of you seeking survival is having to relive everything and have someone say yes or no. Have you been tortured enough? Have you been silenced? Have you been censored enough? And I think, I don't know, the time that I made it to the US, I think it was in a period where diversity and inclusion were like the biggest topics. And now I feel like I can't talk about things again. So I think it's re-emerging in a different way. So that's my answer for that.
Okay, my name is Fabiana Salgado. I'm from Cuba. I have some little notes in my phone because my first language is not English, so excuse me if I make any mistake speaking. We spoke yesterday about a lot of things. I'm going to, first of all, like, thank you for giving me the opportunity of being here. I am a Cuban migrant artist resilience program, and also and I'm a fellow there, and also recently receiving support from Onwards program. That program helped me to be here today. So I want to thank you to all the organizations and to all the people that are like supporting us, no, like exile and migrants artists. Yesterday we spoke about a lot of things. Today I want to speak about how can we find ways to not be or not continue being censored after we suffer that kind of stuff in our countries, no? I came to United States like about 3 years ago because I suffered political persecution in my country. I came from Cuba, from a dictatorship regime. And I'm happy to be here because I find a new vision of the US reality outside Miami. That is the place I live since I came here to United States. In Miami, at least we Cuban have sometimes I believe we think that we are the only persons with problems, and we think that the problems that we have are the only problems that exist. No, I think that is maybe because we are so close to our home, and we still think we are like in our country. So I'm going, like I said, to speak about strategies for artists in exile like us to not feel censored yet again and in this political climate. So I also want to apologize because I have to take a plane like in a few hours to Florida to Miami. So probably I have to like leave earlier. So I apologize. So Florida, as many of you should know, is being a state very collaborative with the present administration. Florida also was very important in the last election results. And there was like a kind of red wave triumph in Florida, specifically in Miami, in Miami-Dade County. Like the Miami-Dade County flips to Republican dominance this year. And being Miami-Dade state, full of immigrants, Latino immigrant, European, from European immigrant, East Europe communities also. So now people like me, people like us, artists, creators, journalists, we are suffering the impact of thinking the way we are thinking. It's the same thing that happened to us in our country. So people like us, like me, that are against the actual regime, we are facing the judgment of our own people or of our own communities, of our governance, of the senators of our states. So it's in that same people that in some moment escaped from a totalitarian regime, and now ask us, we must remain silent, and also ask us to be grateful. So sometimes I think, no, we don't have to be grateful if we don't want so. So for me, what is important is to keep raising our voices, to keep raising my voice. Recently, I was speaking with a colleague. He was a creator of a magazine, independent magazine. He faced political he was political persecuted in Cuba, and now he is confronting the close of his magazine because he was denounced by sectors of civil society in Miami and by Republican senators for speaking and writing about Charlie Kirk and Donald Trump. So that he would not receive any more support. He has been threatened with being reported to ICE. So for me, strategies I am putting in the table right now for my creation. I am a filmmaker. Some strategies I am putting in the table is and find ways and language, new forms to from where we can defy the usual or the standards way of create, no, like thinking in ways to get away from the industry for the commercial aspects, and thinking in our work as artists, like if it is our only resource to live, to survive, and remain present. I think in collective ways of creation, back in Cuba, I create art space where we get together some artists that confronted in that moment the status quo, and we give those artists spaces and for exhibition, for debate. So today, I would like to think about that, no? To find new forms, to define the usual standards, ways of create, and to tell, thinking in interdisciplinary models, maybe, I want to speak from a specific example I put in practice a few years ago, where we, with some filmmakers, colleagues, made exquisite cadaver film, where each of the 12 filmmakers filmed in our countries, our own countries, following the example of what the filmmaker before us had filmed. It was only one rule, but it came like a very unusual film, you know? So after that, we cannot find a place or a space on a festival where we can put our film, and we search and finally like speaking with a lot of programmers in some festivals, we find a way to exhibit our film and find a way of the public of make our film public, no? So this example is for to speak about the need to keep challenging the status quo. And this is an idea for the funders, for the support institutions or organizations. We need to find like and pursue ways to create outside the industry, outside the commercial way, and still make it sustainable. It's difficult. We can find ways to organize concerts, exhibitions, things together. Me, properly, I create from the essayistic way. I find a different way to tell from the filmmaking aspect, and create those spaces for a different art. It can be difficult, but I think we need those spaces, no? Where most of the times the application and the access to funds and the funding depends if you have a paper or if you have a residency or if you had a green card, if you had immigration documents. So I know it exists legal aspect that we have to we can violate, but possibly maybe create spaces or those spaces for artists that are speaking from these different places and that affront these problems that we have here, like artists and or the community of artists here in the United States have right now. So
Fabiana, thank you so much. We know you have to catch a flight, so we wanted you to be able to share as much as possible. So we'll give you a hand as you might need to slip out. And I wonder if there are any other artists who might like to speak briefly to the question of immediate needs. And then we'll pass it on to some of the other working groups.
I think we're...
If you feel like it's already been stated, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yes? Would anybody from any of the other working groups like to speak to immediate needs for artists who've relocated, if that came up for you in your working groups? Anyone? Yes? Somebody's been nominated here.
Oh, yeah. Let's go resettlement. Oh, yeah. So just from the resettlement group, I mean, this did come up of like how to provide comprehensive care and how to make sure that we're not missing anything. I think it's a balance of, you know, when you have resources, you want to be able to give them, but any one organization can't necessarily meet every single need. And the thing is, as well, it's a little bit patronizing to assume we know what every single need is going to be. So it comes to a thing of a big thing that was coming up was like, how do we have these conversations? How do we make sure we're clear? How do we fill in the gaps? We talked a lot about coalition building in our groups, so that like maybe our organization that's actually bringing the person here doesn't have the access to like how to file your taxes, but maybe we can connect you with someone who does. So building that type of coalition was something that came up. I don't know if you...
Can I just add something short to that? Thank you so much for mentioning like sort of the holistic way that you can support someone. And I think like there's definitely immediate basic needs that need to be met. And then something that like AFI and Tamizdat and that's like who supported me did so well is they made sure that those things were covered. And then when I was ready, they started to help me network and integrate myself into the industry more so that I could have a leg up in a country that already kind of doesn't favor immigrants. So I think there's like a natural progression timeline, and we were thinking of this as sort of like there's like immediate needs and then interim needs. Yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Yassine. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, no, you're like, no.
I guess I'm talking about the.
Well, can we hold for 1 sec on that?
Yes.
Is that okay? Okay.
Of course.
So I wanted to say something about the immediate needs discussion. And I mean, there are so many, and I think as many of you have already said, they differ from person to person. I'll say that one thing that came up in our resettlement group conversation was, how can we better address these as organizations and institutions? And we talked about a few different things, but inevitably, much of this always comes back to the issue of funding. And for example, could we get a coalition of organizations and individuals and institutions together and look at an accessible fund that would include legal filing fees and funding for mental health services and funding to help pay your Metro card, and that various organizations might be able to come together and have that be sort of as one. Now, the administrative aspects of that sound like may not be feasible, but it did come up pretty quickly. And so I'm actually curious if in the funding conversation, if there's anything that came up there, not to put you on the spot, Barbara, or the national support orgs, did you guys talk about what you're doing to meet those immediate needs?
In the funding conversation, and please, my fellow funders, tell me if I'm incorrect, it felt like what we were doing was a self-interrogation of the funding community. So we were less involved in, our conversation was less about the intricacies and specifics, particularly of supporting resettlement, but it was more about how can we as a field better be of service, and how can we better coalesce, share ideas, talk to each other, be in the room together, be in these types of rooms, be part of these conversations. A lot of times we find ourselves, or we purposefully separate ourselves from these rooms, from these conversations, for any number of reasons. And so we were, maybe it's because I am a theater person by training, and a lot of us are in the room are artists first, and then stumbled into funding. But we were talking in a lot of metaphors, and sort of what we were talking about is the table. In a way, maybe what we're doing is starting at a banquet table, which is too big, and we need to be starting together as a field at a bistro table, and then making sure that those bistro tables are diverse, so that we're not just talking to ourselves. This is a very nice banquet table, I would just like to say. I'm very happy to be part of this banquet table. But just how do we activate ourselves as a field? How do we become more integrated? How do we be better listeners as part of the conversation? And how can we make coalitions? We've been talking so much today about we are stronger together than we are individually, trying to break down silos. In the philanthropic field, but I think across all fields. So I think that today, for example, CEC, thank you, this is a major part of that. So that's the general overview. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, that was awesome. I wanted to say, Lama was in a residency program that AFI and Tamizdat did together, or AFI did and Tamizdat sort of clommed onto. And I think one of the things, I'm saying this sort of for the sake of, well, those of you who weren't part of the making of the sausage, and the people in the room who are sort of like, well, how did that happen? It deals, and I think the topic is imperfection. And you had a great laundry list of things that people need. So the question that we kept coming up against is, well, if we can't do those things, should we not bother? Like, we started from like, we've got immigration expertise. We can get people here. That's great. Oh, and we've got an apartment we can use. That's great. But for example, in a residency program for artists at risk who are arriving here, do we have any business starting a residency program for artists at risk if we do not have a solid mental health support system? If we don't, or if we can't because it's the US, do we just not do it? Or do we go ahead with it and be like, I hope it works. I hope we don't have a crisis, because we don't have any way of dealing with the crisis. So I think And this speaks to the resources in the field, just like how it's never going to be everything you want, and how badly can we do things and still have it be worth doing? You know what I mean? It sounds like a terrible way to put it, but you know what I mean? Like, it would have been sad to have not done the residency program, even though going into it, we were like, we have nowhere near the resources that we need to do this responsibly.
Also, could you get them some water? Oh, you're having a hard time with the coughing. Thank you. I would just say this is probably getting into some of the solutions, but I think from an overall perspective, when we think about the questions you're asking and the things that you need, if the same question came from a doctor or a lawyer where there's ample resources and associations because of the services they provide to people and the economy, those things come in droves. What we need to be more intentional about is showing the value. And again, I know this is a bigger solution for specific problems, but being very intentional at looking at unlikely partners and also reframing the narrative in a way that shows, at the end of the day, the very nature of what you all do and bring to the United States sharpens our innovation. It speaks to American innovation and bootstrapping, and the very things that our detractors say are what they are for. I mean, if we can really reframe that narrative in a way that's comprehensive and show, look, this isn't a matter of trying to come up with resources for a group that we have to convince the world or the country deserves. This is also a driver of mental health for everyone in the US, and a driver of creativity, and a driver of the economy and of jobs. So I think part of this also is just reframing the narrative in a way that speaks to, frankly, a truth and a power that's always been there in a way that doesn't involve either humbleness or scarcity thinking and wearing the badge on our sleeve that we should have for a long time. So for what it's worth.
Sorry, I'll just add to one point here that was in our notes in the artists group, but that I also want to highlight, because one of the things that was brought up is that, should we do it at all if we cannot do it really well or perfectly? And I think that, from what I hear from most of the artists in the room, is that it doesn't matter. It still needs to happen, and programs can continue to be evaluated and sort of updated, fixed as they go. But that is far better than having nothing. And that another thing, especially that I think Lama had brought up, mental health support. And even when you're speaking of a residency, what happens if somebody has a mental health crisis in the middle of a residency? So there can be formal supports, and there can also be informal supports. And when we talk about sort of community networking, one of the things that had come up is that many of the artists who have now been here, let's say a few years, and who have some access, want to share with the next wave of people who are struggling. And so some kind of peer support is also really a big part of just even the basic point of mental health support. You need the professionals, but you also need the community. And I think, Nisha, you were speaking to that earlier. All of that is part of, and, I think that there's a term, but that, the enemy of the good is like the attempt to make it perfect, right? And sometimes good enough is really good, right? Okay, so so to point out to the peer component of that, and then I don't know if anybody else wants to speak to like the urgent, immediate needs from the other groups, or the artists are ready to move on.
Yeah, I was going to add one last thing to this point, and then I think Nisha was going to take us to the next section, but just also wanted to say that this did come up in our resettlement conversation. And I think as individual organizations, we're often trying to source connections and people to provide these types of resources in kind. And something we were able to talk about as a group is like, we really need to do a better job as organizations at getting together with our peer organizations and saying, here are the list of needs. Like, I've got this person and this person. Do you have that person and that person? And that was something that we all agreed could go a long way towards doing better at meeting some of these urgent and immediate needs just post relocation that you all brought up. So I'll give this back to Nisha, and we can talk about the next phase.
Can I just say one more funder thing? Just to piggyback on what you just said, because we also had a conversation about, we all have mandates and dictates, and we fund this, but not this. And so the same kind of conversation. What can you do? What are your parameters? What holes can we fill? How can we, so that it becomes more of a a puzzle situation, as opposed to just standing alone trying to figure out, well, this is a little piece of the pie that we can fund. So just agreeing with you.
So there's infrastructure and opportunities for exchange to continue to remain abreast of what those immediate needs are. And this conversation has already traveled into the second piece that you identified, which is what are the holistic needs as artists continue to resettle, peer-to-peer networks. Let's keep going in that direction in terms of what does that holistic strategy look like? What does it necessitate? What would you like to speak to? Should we start with the artists?
Hello, my name is Yasmin. I may not answer that question directly. I understand that we're trying to find specific solutions right now, but I think I would like to talk about my experience with AFI and how that model has been really helpful, resourceful, and such a safe space for me as an artist, as an asylum seeker, as a queer person. I was trying to apply for asylum for a while during COVID, and every resource, NGO, organization that I have tried to reach out to, they were not taking applicants, and that's fair. Resources can be very limiting sometimes. So I had to work and make money and pay a lawyer to apply for my asylum case, which was a horrible experience. But then luckily, Lama introduced me to AFI. And I was like, they're not gonna answer me. And it didn't take them 24 hours to answer me. It is a very small team taking care of a lot of artists, but they do find the time and the resources and the energy to give back and to help without expecting anything back, without centering themselves as the saviors in our stories. That being said, it is definitely difficult as artists who are, again, asylum seekers, most of us are, to sit here and talk constantly about what we need, what we want. I feel like we've had a lot of those conversations, and now I will refer to my notes. I think there is some harm that is being caused by organizations, whether artistic, whether immigration. It doesn't come necessarily from a lack of awareness, it comes from structure. Many arts organizations frame themselves as supportive, but operate through power dynamics that mirror the very systems that they claim to resist. Immigrant, trans, and POC artists are often invited for visibility, then sidelined when their perspectives become uncomfortable. It's sometimes, as an artist, disheartening to be in rooms where organizers earn up to 6 figures salaries per year, but all we get is a symbolic stipend that doesn't cover the money I lose when I release my shift at work to come and be present over here. Helping us gives a sense of philanthropy, but in reality, it could be harmful because it keeps the imbalance intact while calling it care. Our pictures are used online and on flyer, introduced with labels before our names are even said. We're tired. Yes, we are resilient, but we are exhausted, as you can imagine. And I imagine everyone here is exhausted with this current state of the world, I guess, not just the country. So we're tired of conversations and opening dialogues. We know what's happening in the world. And at this point, organizations with decades of experience should be showing up with resources. Artists are constantly asked, what should we do for you? I think it's time organizations come to us and say what they're going to do. They can take anti-racism trainings, read books about trans people, buy from Palestinian small businesses. But if they're not immersed in the communities they claim to support, they end up wanting to save us without knowing how to speak to us. They freeze, and in doing so, replicate the same elitism that they claim to challenge. I always leave these events wondering, on the thermostat of pain and suffering, did I share enough to be helped, or did I hold back? Because again, we're tired of replaying the same stories over and over just to be seen.
Just to round up what Yasmin said, a couple of things that did come up in our discussions yesterday on top of that were we felt that the different arts organizations or the different organizations that do help us also need a better understanding and support immigrant and exiled artists dealing with the effects of re-trauma and hypervigilance due to the current political climates in the USA. And just being sensitive about the different things or the different ways that they would like us to present ourselves or the different things they would like us to speak about. Because at the end of the day, are you just doing it for your organization, or are you actually having it in mind and keeping us safe in the present climate that is going on? Because yes, we'll gladly tell our stories and everything, but how does that help us or keep us safe? Those are some of the things that came up. So many times we don't feel a sense of a safe haven because it's not about us, it's about the different organizations. And as a result, we feel like we have heightened mistrust and difficulty of building relationships with the very people that are trying to help us. And then naturally, we always have emotional exhaustion from persistent vigilance, because on top of running away from our countries and from everything that was going on there, even here, especially now, then we're doing this all over again. And many times the different organizations don't really fully understand because they're not us. And it would be nice if once in a while they did ask how and if there's a way that they could actually help us in this. And just really just have a need. We also felt there was a need for trauma-informed approaches in all artist support services, because many times it doesn't necessarily help with the trauma itself, even if all the other things are being helped here and there. And it's not to say we're not grateful, because many times, especially if we're invited for things, sometimes we'll say yes because we're being polite, or to again because the stipend that's been provided might be the only thing between us and starvation. But at the same time, when we say no or ask to change the narrative in which we are being presented, it's not coming from a place of not being appreciative. We are also thinking about our own safeties.
I just wanted to add one thing to that. It's a comment that was made in our conversations when we were trying to just organize our thoughts, was that on this issue of feeling re-traumatized and hypervigilant, one of the artists asked, well, is that something for our own sort of mental health issues that the answer is we should see a therapist? And I'm like, no, I'm putting this back. This should be more about the art service organizations, the resettlement organizations, so the people who are working in these institutions, for them to think about their training, their own understanding of their interactions with the artists. And sometimes you're probably left confounded, like, I'm trying to help you, why isn't this working, right? So the push, I think we want to put back here is onto the folks who are working in the institutions to think about, why am I getting this response? What is happening here? And to not put it back on the artists saying, well, okay, the solution is you need a therapist, or you're dealing with PTSD, but also how again, the community, and you are the community, and we are all holding each other's hands, how the community itself can make the efforts to be better prepared for these interactions that can sometimes be, disruptive, can be difficult, but yes, you're dealing with people with PTSD.
To speak to that, actually, I just really appreciate this comment. So I'm slipping out of moderation just for a second to jump in, just to say that, when I think about trauma-informed principles and how those might be taken up in cultural organizations, funding organizations, et cetera, some of the 6 main principles, some of them have already been named here, and I just want to lift them up. And that is establishing a sense of safety. Of course, that can shift and is always subject to what does safety look like, what does it mean in the immediate, and what does it mean perhaps in the longer term or the midterm. Transparency, as it is intended by the organization, but also as it is negotiated, because there are some conversations that some of the points that have already been raised here are already a step towards a greater transparency. Listen, when I say yes, this is what I mean, but don't, if I say no, don't take it that, there's a negotiation at play. Peer-to-peer support opportunities, peer-to-peer exchanges, and a sense and many opportunities, or every opportunity for choice and control, because often it is choice and control that has been taken away. So in every opportunity that is being discussed, what provision is there for choice and control over narration and visuals and the unfolding events, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like some of that was already at play today. Those are 4 out of the 6, and just because I'm tired, I can't remember the other 2, but they'll come back. They will come back, and they're kind of common sense in many ways, but I just hear some of that being lifted up here as key principles. I want to throw in something else while I've got the mic, just because of time, and you've given up on showing us time because you've done it all together. You did. You showed me the first 20 minutes, and you're like, guys aren't listening. So that's it. So I'm just going to toss the third one in there because we're sort of at that time. And the third one is just forward looking, which is let's continue to lift up the needs in the middle zone, in the relocation time. But let's also be thinking about, so what are we saying to each other? What are we saying to each other in terms of what's needed, what could be built, what could be strategized around? What are those forward looking paths? And I just want to be aware that of folks on my left, would anyone here like to speak to anything?
Well, I think, my name is Yayun, and I run the Immigrant Artists Program in New York Foundation for the Arts. And I think really what I've learned from serving the artist community over the years is, again, the theme that we've been talking about again and again, the power of connecting with each other, the power of start speaking to each other, reaching out to each other, building a community, and then from one person to a little group, and then a bigger group, and then it's incredible powerful. And I myself also really learn and try to practice that in at least in my professional life, applying the same principle, trying to think about how do I regularly connect with my peer, how do I keep learning, creating opportunities to for the communities to learn from each other. And then I think I wanted to kind of bring back one of the points that we made earlier, is that I think in multiple working groups, we talked about the tendency of coming together and building coalition. But at the same time, many of us share this frustration that most of the time the coalition can be maybe at the end a little bit out of focus, or maybe talking about the same thing. And I guess this is a question that I wanted to throw out, because we did float an idea where maybe we need someone who understands how to run those type of meeting to help us move forward. And perhaps that should be a resources that can benefit the field. I just want to bring it up, and maybe somebody else can, continue.
It's a race. Just real quick to add to that, I'm so glad you brought that up. And I'm so glad you brought up not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. Speaking from my background is in campaigns and politics, and I'm Sam with APAP, with Association of Performing Arts Professionals. I just want to press on all of our efforts. So from a strategic campaign perspective, We need to be approaching all of this like a campaign to inspire people to step in to fight on your behalf because of the value, but do it in a way that we check ourselves. I see so much infighting, not with this group, but in the world that I came from, infighting or self-soothing, things that are platitudes that in the moment make us feel great coming out of a conference, and we have endorphins and excitement and everything's going to be great. And then an hour later, somebody earlier said, we get home and we're like, no, we need to check ourselves and have someone facilitate to make sure the things that we're talking about can be activated, and they have a strategic goal, they have a business case, they have a community case, they have an artist case. And we did talk about how, in some ways, artists actually, because of their divergent reasoning and their creativity, could serve as facilitators much better than we could. We have lanes that we focus on, and we're really good at those lanes. We're not as good at weaving them together, less about coalition and more about solidarity that is forward and impactful. So I really want to lift up what you said. Thank you for bringing that up. It's not even a matter of striving to be strategic. We have to check ourselves and each other to make sure all of our efforts are for something moving forward, not to make us feel better or to just say we did something.
I want to add to that to me translates to decolonization, dismantling like supremacist power structures. Like I think what your suggestion of like why don't we get consultancy on how to lead our own coalition and be in that seat? Because I think one thing a lot of us are experiencing is being an immigrant already sets you back. Like you may have been a doctor, but when you come here, you might need to work as a delivery driver. Like there are so many hoops you need to jump through. You need to like reaccredit, like apply, retake testing again. The immigration system, we've just been hearing all day about the cost that can be in the way. Like there are so many challenges and catch-22s. And not all, like some of it really comes from like our countries being colonized or proxy wars or things like that. So we might be a little sensitive to feeling like we're getting handouts, because that's not true. We are very, very intelligent. We're very talented. We're very capable, and we love being empowered. We love organizations that stand with us, but also who notice that, you know, I'm here like almost 10 years and I'm still finding myself in entry-level positions, and I'm too scared to apply to director jobs. Why is that? That's because equity is like, we need to check ourselves moving forward. And maybe, Matthew, my answer to your question about like, if it's not perfect, what if we reframe that into individualized care? It's a case-by-case basis. We act as a cocoon. We receive, and then you have like a buddy system where someone's been here for a long time, who is an immigrant themselves, gets to have a personal connection with someone who's just arriving. And it never has to be perfect. And you might have bitter, angry us, because it is very painful and dehumanizing. And sometimes like children who scream not that we are children, but children who are the most rebellious typically need the most love, and you are providing them the safety to express their anger. And so maybe in a way, we also feel like finally someone's listening, and we just have to air it out, because you know how this country functions and how institutions function, and you can help us connect with these partners so that we can really stand a chance and like bridge those gaps. We've all seen that visual of like equality and equity in that race. So how can institutions help us out in that way?
I'm sort of typecasting myself here with saying negative things, so I'm sorry about that. I think part of what makes this hard is that, yeah, there are a handful of people who are making those six figures, but the vast majority of the people who are trying to do this work we're talking about are people in their 20s who are working 50 and 60-hour weeks, making $12 to $15 an hour. And their capacities is always pushed so far to the limit because the whole sector, nobody's thriving. And that's, I think, part of the problem is that, you know, when I think about when your colleague brought up the notion of gratitude, we're supposed to be grateful for it. It's like, No, not grateful to the system, but the people who are trying to do the work are probably, in some cases, being traumatized by the work itself, right? And so that's the problem. That there's a tension between like the people who are trying to serve this, trying to create these services, and the amount of support that is. You see what I'm getting? I don't have anything more to say on this, but I just think that that's a big part of it because the whole sector is so not thriving and not, it is a scarcity economy. So that's my depressing thing to say. So sorry about that.
Hi. Brooklyn in the house. My name is Bart, was not here. One of the things that came up in our working group, I think it goes hand in hand with Yasmin, Achiro, Lama, what they just talked about, agency, right? We left our countries because we were stripped of agency. In my case, I was never born with one. I just tried to figure out by making art, and that offered me agency. And I was an established artist back in my own country before I left. And then when I got here, it's everything from square one. Didn't really know anybody when I moved to New York. I just started meeting my fellow creatives because of ACN and AFI. So one of the ideas that I always bring up in these kind of conversations is a physical space, a communal art space where we are supposed to meet, and not just the kid who just graduated from an MFA program from Pratt, or somebody else who like we cannot really relate to or share our experiences with. Someone like Yasmin, someone like Lama, someone like Achiro, someone like Jansu, where we meet, we have our own corners, we make work with agency, and then people can do studio visits, we can show our work, and then we can build the community and coalition that way. And it's not going to be perfect, and it's not the reason we should not do it. There was one example in Paris called Artists in Exile, where they offer spaces for people. And I got a chance to visit it. I was in a different residency at the time, but they run a really cool program where people who are seeking asylum in France can have a space or a corner. And I thought it was going to be the similar case when I got here, but I found out that America is way behind. So I think it could be one of those like sparks where coalition building can, begin.
May I just add one thing? Thank you, Bart, and thank you all for saying what you have to say, because I think from an organizational standpoint where I'm sitting, it's important to hear. I think as Matt say, I'm coming with negative and I'm a kind of a debate owner in a room. I'm going to add to that, and I'm sorry because I wish we could do more. I wish we could do differently. I think we all kind of learn a lot from the program we have developed. You bring a lot of really important part about, trauma, about well-being, about peer-to-peers, creating group. I think what you mentioned, Bart, is the Atelier des Artistes in Paris. It's a state-funded organization, 95%. So I think what also I want to stress here is this is the US. Artists in this country, all of them are struggling. Very few are making it. There is no status. There is no unemployment. There's no maternity leave. There's nothing. And I think that's the difficulty also for all of us to help, is how, structurally, it's also very, very difficult and complex. I mean, we have been there for 12 years. It's a very complicated city to navigate. even you're not like, and I was coming from a status of privilege. I was not traumatized, I've never seen that, but it's very, this city of New York, but this country is extremely demanding. It's extremely difficult. And so I think what I'm trying to say is the models should be changed. Things should be in your hands and be empowered by you and not by us. Absolutely. The funding model need to be changed. What I'm trying to say is like we do what we can with what we have, and we know that it's not enough. And we are very, very aware of it. And I think the question of Matt came really from the heart, like, but should we be doing it? You know, and I think you answer it very well. So again, thank you for your thoughts, because I think we have been so many times in this conversation. What are the action? What, like, literally we're gonna walk, you know, from this amazing group. What do we do concretely with the few capacity we have? And I think Matt also, again, the people that work are really stretched at the limit. They do what they can, and we wish we could do more. I think the power is like, can we do more together, and especially differently? I think there is a structural problem in this country in terms of recognition of the status of an artist. There is no recognition. There is no benefit, and I feel the funding system is also we have to challenge you. We have to challenge funders.
Thanks, Julie. No, I was just going to say we didn't just only have challenges because I was trying to move us forward. We also had a couple of things and solutions that we did talk about that are working right now. But I don't know if somebody wanted to say something before we carry on. We're good? Okay. So yes, so we did speak about a couple of things that we appreciate and that we feel are working. And one of them, and I know Shelley did touch a little bit about talking about peer-to-peer coaching or peer circles that do help. We did talk about informal immigrant or exiled artist mentorships and meetups, and the desire that we have, as Lama mentioned, being here and having benefited from a number of things and might be a step ahead than other people that are coming behind us, and how we always want to give back. And that said, I did want to talk about the different organizations or different programs that do work and that are helping, and maybe more organizations could do more of that. One particular organization that started an artist community type thing, and it's actually called the Artist Community Network, was AFI, where we actually have peer-to-peer. Because one thing I do appreciate and that I'd like to say is that, yes, many of the organizations that do help immigrants when they do come, or exiled artists and human rights defenders, is they pair us up or try to introduce us to US-based artists or human rights defenders or organizations to help us kind of understand the climate that we're in, not climate per se, the atmosphere, or basically understand US and what goes on and stuff like that. And that is very, 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 very appreciated. But we also like to go a step further and insist kind of that many times, because we have come from the situations that we've come, sometimes the better peers that would help us the most are people like us or people who came before us. So yes, so Artist Community Network is something that does that, where we do have different artists in the same field, but all are in exile. And then we come together and there'll be a mentor and mentees, and literally just have discussions and help each other out here and there and everywhere, give each other resources and stuff like that. And even if it's, again, like we talked about the resources, we know the resources, we know and understand that the resources are very little, but it is our desire to give back. So also taking advantage of us being willing to give back and having different communities like this that actually do things like that. Another thing that also works that I've been doing is the Criminal Queerness Studio. It's a playwriting class, sort of, that has been created for playwrights from countries where where queerness is criminalized, and that goes a long way, because then, I'm one of the teachers, so it's like they're listening or hearing from somebody who has been or is in their shoes, and finding out different ways to navigate and to actually have their voices heard and stuff like that. So different organizations like that, different things like that can be done. Yes, I'm talking about a playwriting thing. There could also be an artist thing, a music thing, but then that's immigrant-led, so that it's more like, I understand where you're coming from, and I want to tell you how I navigated the waters here, there, and everywhere. Another thing that I absolutely love doing more recently is something by the Brooklyn Library, and they have what we call the Open University program that happens twice a year, and this has what they strive to do is have immigrant-led professional style, university style workshops or lectures. And so so these classes, as much as they're open to the public, so it's not necessarily just for immigrants, it does help us feel, because many times, like Lama said, we've come from the top of the chain and now we're very at the bottom. But in a situation like this, where they're actually trusting you to actually do what you're good at. So if you're a doctor, you're gonna speak about doctor things, and that is the one space that has been availed for you to feel like you're actually important or you're actually being seen. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight the different things that we do appreciate that are going around, that are actually working, and different programs that other organizations could actually say, pick a leap from, and just do it in their own way, I suppose.
I'll just add on to this very quickly. Again, just trying to make sure all points that we discussed in our very rich conversation are put out here. So one being that, again, Bart, who was not here, who is here, spoke about cultivating informal artist-led spaces. And again, I want to underline artist-led spaces. Now, of course, you know, when we think about that, we think, oh, you know, money, who has the space? And again, I feel like even if it's artist-led, what we're looking for in our community, which is the rest of you here and here, is to, you know, the access points that you have, to share those access points. So for example, I'm just going to give examples from the past that have worked, right? Because I think it's important to look. So for example, right here in New York City, about 25 years ago, still active today, South Asian Women's Creative Collective, formed by artists, partnered with the Asian American Writers Workshop, would lead, at least since the early 2000s, salon-style gatherings for South Asian female-identified creatives. And in those salons, there wasn't necessarily a lot of need for, you know, grants, other funding. It was simply show up. At that point, it was like, if you want and you can afford it, give a $3 donation, make it potluck. Somebody would, you know, maybe two or three artists would speak for about 10 minutes about their work, and then there'd be a party. Right? So that's it. Very simple monthly salon style events. And other groups I've been involved with, for example, in Toronto, I come from Canada, there was the South Asian Visual Arts Collective. We have here, you know, representative from NIFA, Immigrant Artists, a sort of collective. We were doing this about 25, 30 years ago, maybe. Same thing, peer to peer. So artists who perhaps were in the earlier waves of more sort of professional families that came over in the 70s, etc. And the, you know, the artists who had sort of a fair amount of sort of access privilege would mentor new immigrant South Asian artists. And so those kinds of things can happen with very little money. And these are all artist-led initiatives. It's much harder today. And yes, you know, we're talking about especially spaces in New York, but I think everybody here may have access to space. So if you can provide a room like this or the lobby, something magical can happen there, right? Just by providing sort of the access to space. And again, agency. If you provide the space, the artist will lead it and do something magical, right? And so, yeah, moving on. And I think, yeah, I think that's kind of, and then there was, I think, Kansu has something to add, and then maybe some response from.
Yeah, hi. My name is Cansu, and I'm from Turkey. I'm really glad to be here today, and thanks AFI and ACN, all my artist friends. It was like it's great to being a part of this group because I think we all are very special, and we all have our own stories, and it's all bringing in same point. So yeah, it says like kind of my topic is I think the most essential on my topic is like being an artist in USA and being an artist in exile, that you cannot be able to travel outside and also apply any other residencies around the world because we have a travel limitations, which is very hard to know that and also deal with that. Of course, I'm not looking forward to go back to my country, but it's just like I will love to be able to travel and apply any other residencies around the world, which also I applied a residency in Mexico, but I couldn't go because I was naive enough that when I apply to asylum, like it's going to be handled immediately and I will be able to travel, but that's not the case. So, and I couldn't be able to do it. And the residency, you need to pay some amount of money. So since they postponed to residency, because COVID also happened and give me a chance to postpone it, but it's just like I couldn't get my money back or anything. And also, I think the problem is also main problem is the other countries like that you apply for residencies. I think people from there, they never understand what you're dealing here. Like they don't understand, they don't have a sense like that you cannot be able to travel to somewhere else. Like they don't understand why, and you need to explain yourself that over and over again, like, look, I'm in this situation, it's because of that kind of thing. I think like it needs to be like needs to much wider attention how art asylum seekers are suffering not being like relocation, or and I think all the other countries, like all the artist communities, needs to have that knowledge that it's very hard to travel around the world for us for a while. Yeah, and my point is that. And also I just want to make some another point, which is the mental health issue that I want to tell. I always felt like I'm happy that we're have access to like a mental health support, but I think the key point that we're missing is like, for me, having a mental health issue, even like recognizing my mental health issue is like cost me time and money. So having a mental issue is a luxury for me. So I definitely like protect myself to not have any depression or collapse on anything, because I need to work, I need to support my life, I need to be able to continue. So I think it's not that easy to accept that I have something and I need to deal with it. So I think the most important question is to the person, like the person when it's come to the door. I think if you're asking like, oh, which mental health journey you're having, I think that that's not the question. I think, are you really like able to getting help to have getting a luxury to have a mental health issue? I think it's more important question to before noticing. So that's my point. Thank you.
Great. We're talking about solutions now, right? Yeah. Just to jump back in again, apologies up front if I come across a little too aggressive on this, but I just want to challenge the notion of there's only so much we can do and there are only so many resources that we have. And just hearing you all speak about your lived experience that I don't have, but just try to understand what you're going through and what you've gone through for decades and the community's gone through. I just want to challenge the funders and the people with resources that we can treat this like a war room. I have been in the foxhole with candidates who had zero chance and then drew 1 million people to DC for an inauguration. I've seen things happen with the right resources and the right strategies that were impossible. So we're saying we have this need, we're saying we don't have the resources, build a war room. Funders jump in, literally start a campaign, hire a bunch of campaign staff to take this on. There's a group called We the Action in DC that we started about 6 years ago that provides pro bono lawyers for all of us that nobody really knows about because they don't market because that's not the purpose. But it's a resource that anyone can tap into. They sign up for it, and then We the Action will get them an attorney to advise them on anything. We should be using a source like that, but we should be starting a source like that. There are so many campaign workers that just came off this cycle looking for work that would be phenomenal at this as organizers and in a war room capacity that do this for a living and that create change where it does not seem possible. I go back to what I said before to challenge how we do this. We need to do this differently and think about this in ways we never ever have, but that have been leveraged by other campaigns and other sectors that have gotten them to where they go. People that do research that realize if you look at mental health, there are mental health issues from the adverse experiences you've had, but the very thing that you do in communities providing a unique form of culture is mental health services. United Healthcare just approved prescriptions for arts as a form of therapy for everything from Parkinson's to heart disease. There's a lot of money there waiting to be tapped into by our community because there are associations trying to fund arts and health together. National Medical Fellowships is another organization that's leaning into this aggressively. They create programming in communities to train doctors and nurses to fill the healthcare access gap, and they want to incorporate more arts, and they're having a hard time finding arts organizations to jump in. The War Room could talk to them, bridge that gap, and be off to the races in a matter of days. We need to think about this differently and come at this from a campaign perspective, and there is funding there to do it, and there's a way to do it. Just to challenge the group again, we have to think about this differently, and we can get there.
Sam, I think that that's really great and important perspective for us to keep in mind, that we can build models that look different and bring different folks, into campaign building and movement building. I guess the thing that I maybe wanted to bring it back to briefly in this moment, that's not a but an and. I mean, building movements and war rooms does take time. So in the meantime, I feel like part of the reason that we all wanted to gather here today was to think about maybe in the more immediate, how can we think about sharing resources when we know that resources are so limited? So, this is something that AFI and some of our other peer organizations in the space have done to the extent that we can, and I might have mentioned this earlier, but it's like, if you have access to a therapist who is willing to offer low bono or pro bono sessions to an artist, please come let us know, or please talk to the artists. And Bart, to your point about space, we had an opportunity during COVID, and I think actually one of the artists is here. Hi, Tara. Wherein a bunch of office spaces in Dumbo were empty, and a friend of mine came to me and said, "Hey, I know you work with artists. Like, if you have artists who have lost their space, we want to offer you this office space turned studio for, I think it was 15 months, Tara, if I'm not wrong." And they offered it to AFI for, I think it was like $500 a month or something. And we were able to turn around. And so, sharing space where you can just create makeshift studios, even if it's temporary. So I guess I just want to implore anyone here who feels like you have resources to share that address some of the things that were brought up by the artists to come and talk to any of us about what you think that might be. And, collaboration and collective sort of resource sharing can run parallel and alongside movement building and war room building and campaign building. And I think we can do it all, especially when we are all working with limited resources and capacity. Sorry.
One of the things that came up a lot in our working group was around working together, which we called by many different names, whether it's coalition or working as a group or a collective, or, you get the idea. And we touched on the idea of this feeling that we do a lot of talking and not a lot of doing. And we touched on this idea that a lot of folks have the sense that they are reinventing the wheel, or that there's something else, there's a blueprint out there, or that this has been done before. And one of the things that we kind of came around to was infrastructure and skills. that like there's a lot of like exciting ideas and a lot of coming to the table, and not a lot of recognition or evaluation about how we do that and the skills it takes to do it well. There was an example in the room that we talked a very little bit about called the Safety Net Coalition, which is happening here in New York, and it grew out of a group called the New York Grantmakers in the Arts, as an example of something that took off and is very active and very pragmatic. And one of the things that I experience in that group that is going really well is a very clear infrastructure. And there was a little bit of dreaming of like, maybe there's like a guide of like how to onboard yourself into better coalitions, but something that's like even granular so much as like, there was Kibra in our group was talking about, and I saw this really clearly with Elizabeth and Karen, thank you, talking together, where there's a natural and very deep alignment. But even the process of assessing if a coalition is deeply aligned for your org is a skill. And figuring out that it's mission aligned and assessing your staff and your organizational capacity, both in time and in money, to really show up and do that work is a skill. And those are things that can be built, but they're a little bit, they're not sexy. They're not like surfaced, they're not forefronted when we're like having these calls to action and these exciting ideas. But we dug into them a bit in our working group as like a really important piece of that.
I'm going to pass this out to all of you because from what I understand, the agreement was more to be in conversation for about 90 minutes or so. So I want to honor the fact that some people might need to step out, and indeed some folks have. If there are comments, questions, ideas that you've been sitting with as you've been listening to this conversation, we have a couple of mics that could come to you. This one could come to you. That one.
So if you have a comment, you need the mic so
There's one up here.
Audience can hear it.
There's two people here.
The lighting is a bit difficult from down here, just saying. So if you do, maybe you want to like say something so we can find you.
Hi, everyone. Good.
Yes, please go ahead.
John Miller with Ithaca City of Asylum and also the Onwards Project. And I just want to put in a word for communities outside New York City and the major metropolitan areas, which is linked to the question of resources. I live in a college town 5 hours away, 50,000 people, and for 25 years we've been supporting an exiled writer. There are university towns and small cities all over America with museums and art organizations and community organizations and faith-based organizations who would love to be supporting artists in exile and writers in exile. And I don't have much more to add than that, but it seems in the last couple of days I've been getting more and more excited about the idea of trying to create some sort of a movement nationwide where communities could really welcome people in, and they can tap resources that we don't know about, the local family foundation or the university endowment or things like that. That's my comment.
Thank you. There was a comment behind you as well. Go ahead. Tara?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Tara. I want to thank Yasmin, for the artist, for bringing the experiences and the analysis you have, the relationship between the organizations and the artist, what is expected when we present ourselves in a room, the unspoken pressure of sharing our experiences and the toll of that in our mental health, emotional health, but also as a human being. As I was listening to these sessions for last few hours, one thing came in my mind, and also because of my personal experience of becoming an artist in exile, organization need to learn how to love the artist. There is support, which is very necessary, and organizations are there and in a appointed position to support the artist, offering resources. But I think we need to focus on a little poetic part of the relationship between artist and the organization, that organizations are there to love the artist. If we artists, we don't exist, we don't make the work, we don't take the risk to speak up for ourselves, the need of the organizations will not gonna be there. So I want to see a blueprint for that love relationship between the organizations or the organizer who are presenting the organization and tell us that how they want to love us. If there is love, there will be support, there will be resources, there will be all these beautiful things, the safety, mental health, and all of those stuff. But maybe the organizer, the organizations, all of them, it's a high time. It's been almost like 10 years. I have been experiencing all these institutions in America. It's time for them to learn how to be a better lover, how to bring joy into the conversation. As Shelley was talking about saucy and the party and the potluck, those are also a process of assimilation, a process of making new work and inspiration. It's not just for us to gathering in a very serious hall room and talking about the emotional toll and the experiences and the struggle we are going through. So I hope to see more love, more perfect lover, institution as a lover, also as a mother, also as a salad. There's a beautiful book that I like in this title. So yeah, that's my 1 cent. Institution as my love.
Thank you, Tara. The next ArtsLink Assembly, loving each other.
Love it.
Mia.
Speaking of love, and I mean, I didn't create La Mama, but it is Mama here. And not to say that we are the best lovers here at La Mama. I do feel like this is an organization, because of Ellen's vision, that relationship between artists and the organization is based on, does it sound too hokey to say love? I mean, she said that this place was because of its people. And our people, our community is the artistic community. I'm an artist, and I was trying to make work, and Ellen gave me a home, an artistic home. I'm also, like Ellen, I love to when we have these sort of conversations, I want to always make an action from from this. And so I would love to say, as La Mama, could we start some kind of program with these artists here? And I don't know if it's AFI, forgive me, I came in a little late to the conversation because I still have work in the office right now. But if it's AFI or ACN, yes. And I don't think Craig Peterson is here anymore, but I was going to actually just call on him and call him out and say, can an organization like New York Community Trust give us support so that we can create something with these artists here, whether it's a salon series, whether it's a curatorial program, whether it's a residency program, something, and make something happen together. Would you be open to that? And I will talk to Craig on Monday because I think that would be amazing, because this is why we exist. We're here because of you, and I'm here because I am very lucky. And I want to share this space, these resources that we have that are limited. Yes, very limited. I don't make 6 figures. But so I just want, I want to figure out something that we can actually make happen from these conversations. So I propose that, and hopefully we can be in touch about it.
And you can start without Craig.
Okay.
Start with us, with you.
Well, I'm going to be a bit more selfish and talk about the project. But also, speaking of community and mothers, part of AFI, we are the writers of the ACN have been working for the past 7 months, 8 months, 8 paychecks so far. we've been writing our play, which is made of 3 individual monologues, one written by Achiro, one by Lama, one by me. And the theme of our play is I Am My Mother, and the title of the play is Omin. So if you would like to host us or help us produce this beautiful play, that would be also very nice. Thank you very much. And if anyone else wants to contribute, we accept it.
Thank you. I see you right there.
Yeah, hi. And that's so exciting about doing something here. I just want to emphasize something I heard that I've been thinking about since you all said it so strongly. I'm Karen Atlas with Arts and Democracy and Naturally Occurring Cultural Districts, New York. And I do a lot of coalition building and network building. One thing I'm thinking that I heard you say that I'm thinking about is that power needs to shift, that that there has to be another way of doing things where there is more a way of shifting power. And I have one suggestion, and it's on a small scale, but I'm very involved in participatory budgeting. And it could be interesting if you were able to create a pooled fund to then make it a participatory budgeting process, which would then have the decision-making in the hands of the artists as opposed to the people with the resources. And it's not that it would completely shift everything, but it would help identify what people's priorities are, and the artists could shape the projects, and then they could be voted on from the artists. So that's just a thought, and there's lots of great models of participatory budgets.
Thank you.
Can I say, like, I'm learning of a participatory budget right now, and that's something that by doing that, artists can just be a little more educated about how like institutions are run, administrative, bureaucratic like jobs, because I think there's a reason why we also don't feel comfortable stepping into some roles. And a lot of the entertainment industry is always talking about how do we have better access, and I think that's a brilliant suggestion. Thank you.
Back to the war room mentality. Many people are not thinking about HR 1 because the threat landscape is massive, but there's a provision in there that now allows any American to give up to $1,000 that's not itemized. You don't have to put it in your taxes. You don't have to work with your accountant. And it is an immense opportunity for this field to run a digital campaign in communities and regions to raise $50, $2, $100. This could be that. The funders hire a DDC or a Blue Ocean or some kind of a digital agency to run a digital fundraising campaign that you all control the funds for. And within a month, you could be at $1 million, $2 million, $3 million if it's done right. So just hashtag war room. Okay.
That's going to be our take. I do think that the war room strategy is going to need some time to work out because that has come back a few times.
Yeah, that's what we mean by sharing the wealth. It's like things like that.
Yeah.
Hi. Does anyone else?
Over here.
Yes.
I hear a voice. Hi. My name's Sabrina Tenteromano. I'm with Civitella Ranieri, an artist residency program in Umbria, Italy. We have an outpost here in New York City in Tribeca. Come say hi. The Trust for Mutual Understanding will be working out of our office in the new year, so there'll be lots of people
along with us.
Along with
that too.
the Easy ArtsLink at present. So lots of people you can come say hi to in Tribeca. I just wanted to uplift or just throw into the ring my agreement with you over there, and also with our war room strategy, and offer another industry who has done something similar, as I have worked in the green building space, sort of a side pathway in my career. And there is an organization called Advanced Energy Group that I worked with. They do these stakeholder challenges where they get a bunch of people across the industry in a room just like this. And there are these distinct groups that do a pitch of what they believe to be the biggest obstacles to making progress in equity and green in climate, and then the group all votes on what they thought was the most compelling solution to those obstacles. And then at the end of the session, folks volunteer to join a task force and then in the next 90 days, they advance this mission with distinct, clear steps so that it's called a 90-day sprint towards this year-long project. And there are fellows that help the task force stay on task, people who can offer just sort of like logistical support, like here's the Zoom to meet today, you know, that kind of a thing. And my 2 cents of it all is, yes, pooling your resources, finding your shared interest and pooling resources, because it cannot be done with these fractured philanthropic organizations. So pooling those resources and then advancing towards a shared goal, that shared goal to me is completely knocking down the system as it stands and creating something in the artist's hands, or, you know, and starting with that participatory budget framework, I think is an awesome first.
Thank you. I'm just going to cut in and say that a few of the things that were brought up about thinking also outside of New York City, things that could be happening. Unfortunately, most of the artists here can probably not go to Italy at this time, but through your connections and resources with other artist residency centers around the US, because at least the mobility within the US is still possible. And so this idea of getting a lot of the artists here, or I think predominantly New York City based, opportunities to go away, focus on their work, whether it's for a week, you know, few months, whatever, whether it's through universities, artist residency centers around the US. And I think there were some, Simon, some representatives from, what was the artist residency sort of coalition? Like, I think that that's the work they should be doing, is setting up specific programs where at least, you know, hopefully not one at a time, but the idea that at least they could have maybe 2 people who can actually be in conversation with each other and the larger community. So that's not the singular token person, like, look here, here's our, you know, refugee artist of the day, right? But like really engage them in ways around the country so that it can be part of the larger conversation of who belongs in this country. Right.
I would also just like to make a couple plugs and express gratitude for Mia because of what you just stood up and did. You know, and thank La Mama too, because my artistic home has also been here at the beginning of my artistic career. So it feels like sitting on this stage right now feels like a homecoming in many ways. To see the cross-pollination between CEC ArtsLink and La Mama, 2 long-standing, trusted, beloved grantees of the Trust for Mutual Understanding, to have, you know, Sabrina from Civitella come up and say, we're moving in with you, and we're moving in with CEC. So this kind of cross-pollination is really, really, really important. Yeah, I just felt a swell of gratitude, and I felt like I wanted to say something about that.
Can I also just say I want to thank the artists who are here. I was invited in just yesterday, and you know, I feel like as an immigrant artist of an earlier wave, to be connected with artists of the current wave is really important, and I feel, you know, a swell of gratitude to be in community with you. So thank you for letting me into your space yesterday.
This doesn't have to do with us. Throughout our ACN tenure, there are people taking extra good care of us, and they're shy, so they don't want to come here. It's Zanya and Gracie. I just want to give them.
And adding to that gratitude list, I just want to say that like we also appreciate everyone who has either like done a day's work in this field, and also people of color who have paved the way for us to be able to be like this. And I hope that what we're able to leave for future artists who to come will be an even better like situation. And I love that we're always thinking forward.
Yeah, I want to thank you, everyone here. Like, it's a great platform to share our ideas and everything in our mind and somehow, and because we don't have a chance to talk a lot of those things mostly. So thanks for the effort, thanks for everything. It's great to be here. So I just want to say my thank you for everyone.
As we are thanking everyone, it's time. It's time we I think thanked everyone for being here also. So the panel applaud everyone. I just want to thank you especially. I mean, because you put in so much thinking time, not just yesterday, but in all the planning sessions that we got you involved in before that. I just want to say CEC ArtsLink will now try to make sense of all of these shared ideas. We'll be bothering you all a lot in the future. So this is the beginning of a process, I hope. There's a lot of ideas, and thanks to Mia for being here too. There's lots of very tangible and specific initiatives that we can now start to follow up. I just want to also say the party is not over, because we're now going to clear the stage set up for Mernam Rastagari and Sabina Fatak, who will do a DJ set at the end, so we can actually dance together. Sabina is one of our fellows from Almaty in Kazakhstan. Visual aids, thank you. So that's in this space in an hour and a half, just about. The La Mama Cafe is open, so if you're in search of tea in the tea break, there's now tea. There's now other things too. So stay with us. We can now engage in lots of informal conversation. We have an hour and a half until the concert starts. And if you don't have tickets for the concert, come and talk to me. I'm sure we can help you. Thank you so much for everyone. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your thinking. And thank you for the work that you are about to do.